Welcome, Len 2, to the 2020 remote learning due to the coronavirus pandemic. For those of you who in subsequent years might be watching this, obviously you probably remember the days in which you had to wear a mask, so nevertheless that's what we have going on. Today what I'm going to be doing is reviewing both nouns and adjectives, their endings that you remember so well hopefully, and why they would be in the cases particularly that they are. Now, also, as I've often done with my videos, at 3 random times throughout this video, I'm going to be saying the name of 3 specific different animals. They will be simple animals that you can easily spell, and I will make a quiz from Canvas that you can simply get a 100 on by listing those 3 animals, thus proving that you watched the entirety of this video. Now, we will start with nouns. All Latin nouns belong to certain categories, and those categories are called declensions. First declension, second declension, third declension, which we have learned so far. Then you have fourth declension and fifth declension, which we have not. Now, you can barely make it out most likely, but also in each of these declensions, nouns are going to be generally of a particular gender. That is in first declension, if it is a first declension noun, and it will be a first declension noun because it will have first declension endings, A-A-E-A-E-A-M, long A-A-E-A-R-U-M, I-S-A-S, I-S-2. Now the first declension is through. If it is a first declension word, overwhelmingly it will be feminine. There are a few which are actually masculine, and I'll go over those a little bit later. In the second declension, you will find masculine nouns and neuter nouns, and in this column, meaning that they share these endings, masculine nouns, and you will sometimes find feminine nouns, but those feminine nouns, and if I were to write it up there, slash feminine, it would be so small that you could not make it out, and generally they are trees. Now also remember that in the second declension, in the nominative, instead of an ending, sometimes there are a few words that end with R. Those words include puer, boy, wir, man, ager, field, magister, teacher, minister, servant, as well as some others, but those are the 5. Oh, and liber, book. But those are the ones that we have talked about in general. In the third declension, remember that you will have all 3 genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter, but then there are 2 extra columns. Masculine and feminine note share the same endings, and then neuter has a different set, but there is 2 separate columns because there are these things called I stems. Now remember, I stems are certain third declension words whose endings are slightly different. They're only a little bit different. As you can see here, same, 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 a little bit different. That's why the circle is there. Same, different, same, same, and then same again. So, nevertheless, let's talk about nouns and how you will identify them when you see them for the first time. When you see a noun in the dictionary, you will usually be given 2 forms of that noun. We will start with the first declension. You would have the first word, puella in this instance, and then you are going to be given a second word, which of course is the genitive singular, puellae. Of those 2 words, the second word, puellae, is by far the more important. Not the nominative singular, who cares about that, but the genitive singular, because it is the genitive singular form that will reveal to you what the declension is. So you can see all first declension, genitive singular, A, E, I. All second declension, whether it's masculine, or neuter, long I, E. And third declension, regardless of whether it is masculine, feminine, neuter, masculine I stem, feminine I stem, or neuter I stem, short IS, short IS, short IS, short IS. And it is important to note that it is a short IS, not to be confused with a long IS. Now, when it comes to these first declension words, because the nominative does have an ending, and if a word has an ending, then it will also be able to reveal to us the stem. Normally, the genitive is what reveals to us the fact that it is what declension it is, and also it will tell us the stem. But because the nominative has an ending, we can see the stem from the nominative, and so for these, what often you will see I said they will, instead of writing out the full genitive word, they will just write dash and then the ending. So you have the first declension, puella, puellai. To give an example of second declension, we could have servus, servi. And again, it's the same situation whereby you have an ending in the nominative, and so therefore in the genitive you don't have to write out the whole word, but it is the genitive that gives to you the stem. And then you would have, let's say, the word for field. Ager, agree. And here I could not just simply write a dash long I, because, do you see the stem is not revealed in the nominative? And why is the stem not revealed in the nominative? Because it does not have an ending. So you have first, second, another second declension word. Let's go with, I guess we'll go with, oh, I don't know, baculum, baculi. Now note here that I know that baculum is a neuter because in the nominative it has an ending. And that will then be able to tell me that I'm dealing with a neuter word, baculum, baculi, versus a masculine word, servus, servi. Then for the third declension. Please note that the third declension nominative has no ending. And I suppose I'll put it over here since I'm running out of somewhat space. So the third declension that you would have right here, masculine or feminine, let's just choose a feminine, arbor, arboris. And again, you can see here that it is the genitive that gives to you the fact that it's third declension, short is, and you get the stem from it. Now, when it comes to the third declension, you do not know whether the word is masculine or feminine inherently in and of itself. Now, some you would. Like, for example, if I were to put down pater, patris, you know that this third declension word is masculine because the word means father. But you don't know for tree. Now, of course, you do know for tree simply by the fact that, no, don't follow. This is the baby of a tree. And so, what kind of entities give birth to babies? Mothers. And therefore, trees are always going to be feminine. But, in some words, you do not know. For example, if I were to give you wokes, wokus, and here you see why the genitive is so important. It gives you the stem. Couldn't get it from the nominative. Third declension, and I can just tell you, I know that it is feminine. It's a voice. Why is a voice going to be feminine? It just is. And so that way you can tell in the third declension. Now, skipping I stems for now, third declension, if it is a word like, for example, oh, I don't know, nomen. Nomen, nomenis. There is zero way for you to be able to tell that that is, in fact, a third declension neuter word. In the same way you did not know it was third declension feminine, in the same way you didn't know it was third declension masculine outside the fact that it meant father. But there are a subset of neuter words, and I'll give you some examples of tempus, temporis, onus, oneris, opus, operis, corpus, corporis, in that if it is a third declension, it's third declension, third declension, third declension, third declension word, third, whose nominative form has the letters, note I did not say ending, but it has the letters US, 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 those are not endings, just the letters US, then it will be neuter, 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 neuter. Now, does that mean that all third declension neuters are going to have US in the nominative? No. Another example of one that is neuter would be iter, itineris. Third declension, I can tell because of the genitive. That's my stem. It does not have it. And so, it's like squares and rectangles. All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. All third declension words that have US in the nominative will be neuter, but not all neuter words of the third declension will have US in the nominative. Hopefully you understand. Now, there are certain third declension words that are known as I stems. And again, I say that these are words, nouns, not many of them, whose endings are slightly different. And so they would be as follows. I'll give you an example of one. Let's go with a pure I stem. Turris, turris, turium. Now I know that it is third declension. There you can see right there. But here I've given you not only the nominative singular, but also the genitive singular. And at this time, I will say your first animal, wolf, a wolf. You also are going to be given the genitive plural. And because you're given that genitive plural is pointing out to you, as you can see, it ordinarily would just be torum, as that's the stem and the ending, but because it is torium, in the dictionary entry, it's letting you know that it's an I stem, and it has those slightly different endings. The other thing that you will notice, see that third declension words in the nominative have question marks. That's because third declension words have no ending in the nominative. But I stems sometimes have a FACO ending. Do you see the FACO ending? IS for masculine and feminine. FACO ending. It's not an ending. It's a fake one. But because it's a fake ending, we can tell what the stem is. And then for the neuter, so this is third declension, feminine, I think. I frankly do not know the gender of the word tower. Let's assume it's feminine. I could be wrong. Nevertheless, third declension neuter word, I would argue, probably the most famous, is mare, maris, the sea. And here, again, you can see, pun intended, the E, that is the FACO ending in the nominative that is there. And so you can see I get my stem, I see that it is third, and you would have the genitive plural, marium. So, that's how you can tell what kind of a noun that you are dealing with. You have the nominative, then the genitive, and the genitive is the most important one because it is the one that tells you what the declension is. First, second, 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 third, 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 third. I can tell because of the genitive ending. And in that genitive, you will also receive the stem onto which you will put all of the various different endings. If you don't have any questions at this time, we will now take a pause. And our next segment is going to be talking about the endings in and of themselves. Okay, so let's now talk about the endings themselves and as they are expressed with our various different nouns that we see here. So for puella, obviously it would be puella, puellai, puellai, puellan, puella, puellai, puellarn, puellis, puellis, or puellas, puellis. Now please note if I would have the word here, puellai, there are three possibilities that it could be. It could be genitive, it could be dative, it could be or nominative plural. So how do we know which one it is? Context is king. Context is everything for being able to tell us what is its function. So in and of itself, as it is here, we do not know. Once I put it into a sentence and I see the other aspects of that sentence, I then am able to narrow down which one it is. Same thing with puellis. There are two things that it could be, dative plural or ablative plural. And so you only know due to the context of what you are speaking. Now, take a second declension word, servus or ager, in which it would be servus, servi, servo, servum, servo, servi, servorm, servi, servo, servis. Again, it's the same situation if it were servi, as you can see. Servi could be genitive singular of the slave, singular, or it could be the slaves, nominative plural, do something. Same thing with the word servo. It could be dative, to or for the slave, singular, or it could be by, with, because of, from, in, on, at, the slave, in the ablative case. You will only be able to know due to context. Now, let's take a third declension word, and let's go with pater. So, pater, actually, let's go back to the second declension neuter, bacalum. Now, remember there are rules for neuters, and you can see it's written up here. Rule number 1, all neuter words are the same form in the nominative and the accusative. That's why it's bacalum and bacalum. The other rule for neuters is regardless of whatever declension it belongs to, in the nominative plural, neuter nominatives plural end in A. So you can see Nominative plural neuter, batula. Nominative plural neuter, corpora. Nominative plural neuter, even an I stem, Maria. From, as you can see, mare maris, Maria. And even over here, we have not yet learned the fourth declension, genua, which would be your knees do something, versus genua, somebody does something to your knees. But it is always going to end in A. Now that is dangerous. Because if I were to give you kizia, 9 times out of 10, students are going to think that it's maybe this. But it is not. You have to know that it is a neuter word and be able to recognize that it could be plural nominative. The sports cars, like two-wheeled chariots if you would like, do something, nominative plural, or somebody does something to the sports cars, the light two-wheeled chariots. Now, let's move on to the third declension with pater. Pater does not have an ending. It is just the variant form. That's why when we sing this silly song, and I'll go back and sing the second declension, oos, e, o, orm, ees, oos, ees, and the neuter, e, o, a, orm, ees, a, ees. Same thing for the third declension. Pater, patris, short is, patri. That patri is dangerous. Because so many times students will look at it and they will think that it is nominative plural. Why would they think that? Because they see long I and they think, long I, nominative plural. No. Only nominative plural if it's a second declension word. If it is a third declension word, and it's a long I, it is dative. And so therefore it would be to the father, or for the father. Patrem, patre. Patres, patrum. Patrum is also incredibly dangerous. Because people look at patrum, they think they see accusative, but that's only if we are dealing with second declension. If it is third declension, actually is genitive plural. And so you have to be aware as to what declension the word you are dealing with is. Now, let's then turn our attention to an I stem. Let's go with tempus, I suppose. And here you can see, neuter, tempus. It has a US ending. But because the nominative is the same as the genitive, I have it written in here, but instead of using tempus, I use corpus. Let me go ahead and rewrite it so we can see it, I suppose. Corpus. In Latin, you are so conditioned to think every time I see US it will be nominative, but that's not necessarily the case. Corpus, or tempus, or onus could be the accusative direct object. Because that US is not an ending, it is merely an expression of the variant form that one sees here. And so again, how will you know? You have to look at the context of the sentence, and obviously this year we're doing plenty of that, in order to be able to tell whether you're talking about nominative subject, or whether you're talking about accusative direct object. Corpore, corpora, and again, if I were to write down, corpora, people see that A, they automatically think this. You should not. You should think a short A just as much nominative or accusative potential neuter as you do nominative singular, first declension, feminine. Now, let's talk about the I stems. Your I stems are going to be, like I said, exactly the same, except for right here. So here, I would have it as an ablative, arbore. But over here for the I stem, for third declension, I stem turris, turris, turium, it would be turi. And so you have to be aware that sometimes it is expressed as a long I instead of an E. Now, the danger especially comes in with neuter I stems. Oh heavens, it is so dangerous. Because if you were to see the word mare, you initially probably will have a knee-jerk reaction of thinking, yes, that's an ablative. But it is not. You go over here to third stem, I stem, ablative would be mari, because it is an I stem. Mare, with that fake E ending, is the nominative, the C does something, or the accusative, somebody verbs the C. And so in that way you have to be incredibly careful to know what you are dealing with and to know the form. And then for the rest of it, obviously, mare, fake ending, maris, mari, mare, Mari, Maria, Marium, I stem. Maribus, Maria, and then Maribus as well. The last thing that I'm going to point out in this segment is that there are patterns to be seen all the way across. So, to point some of these out, obvious patterns, accusative singular, M, 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 M. No M because it's a variant. No M because it's a variant. M. It's just weird fourth declension neuter and M. So M will be all the way across. Likewise, look at genitive plural. Room, or room, or room, e a room. And so that ending is actually a genitive plural situation. Accusative plural, long letter S, it's neuter, long letter S, and so forth and so on. And then lastly, you will note that there are certain letters to come to dominate certain declensions. First declension dominated by the letter A, second declension dominated by the letter O. People think it's U, but it's not. That's really originally an os, and that's originally an oi, o, o, oi, orum, ois. But over time, the O has dropped out. Sometimes second declension is referred to as O stems. Third declension, it's actually the letter I. That's all in there. Sometimes it's manifest as an E, but I. The I stems are the pure originality. Fourth declension, I think you can figure out what letter that is, U. And fifth declension is dominated by the letter E. So, nevertheless, as you can see, there are patterns to be had all the way across. So, for example, dative. Dative, the letter is I. That AE used to be an AI. These O's used to be OI. And here you can see I, UI, and EI for the various different ones. And so, a pattern is seen all the way across for the various different cases. You just simply have to be able to get used to them, and you will especially need to see these patterns and recognize them when we learn the fourth and the fifth declension within the first, I'd say 3-4 weeks of school this year. So nevertheless, those are your endings. You need to have them memorized. Some of you probably do not still after a full year, but you've got to know your endings. And I do not mean know your endings as in you can sing the silly song, but you have to know your endings by being presented with a particular form and automatically recognizing it or being able to quickly figure out what you are dealing with. So your second animal is a zebra, which makes a funny sound, like a yip, yip, but nevertheless, a zebra. The reason I know this is that my children like to ask Alexa at home what sounds very different animal makes. And we saw on television one time, that is the sound that a zebra makes. So your animal number 2 is a zebra. So in the next segment, we will talk about adjectives and how they use these same endings of first declension, second declension, and third declension. So let's talk about adjectives. Adjectives share these same endings that you can see here, but they are the words that obviously are going to modify a noun. Now we should all know for an adjective to modify a noun, it has to share the holy trinity of nouns and adjectives. It has to have the same case, same number, and same gender. And that's why when you see an adjective, no matter where it might be placed in the entirety of the Latin sentence, you will be able to tell which noun it is modifying because it will have the same case, it will have the same number, and it will have the same gender. Now, whereas there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different types of nouns, really there's only 5, but 2 columns for second, 4 columns for third, 2 for fourth, and 1 for fifth. In Latin, there are only 2 types of adjectives. You have first and second declension adjectives, and you have third declension adjectives. Now, why are they called first and second declension adjectives? Because they are going to have first and second declension endings. Examples of which would include litus, lita, litum, or you could have, I suppose, let's go with, this will be good, pulcher, pulcra, pulcrum. Now please note the difference in the dictionary entry between a noun, in which you had the nominative form, puella, puellai, servus, servi, bacalum, bacali. When you are given an adjective, you are going to be given the nominative, nominative, and nominative form. And this, you can see, would be second masculine, first feminine, second neuter, and why it's called a first and second declension adjective. Because it takes first and second declension endings. Thus, you would translate, or I should say decline it, litus, liti, lito, litum, and so forth. Lita, liti, liti, and so forth and so on, depending upon whether it's modifying a masculine word, second declension endings, modifying a feminine word, first declension endings, modifying a neuter word, second declension neuter endings. And those are the forms that it would then have. Now note, why can I get away with just putting dash a and dash Because that form has an ending, and thus I know my stem. Same thing here. Just like some nouns in the second declension masculine do not have an ending and end in R, so it is the case that some first and second declension adjectives do not have an ending in their masculine form. But again, it is going to be second declension masculine, first declension feminine, and it is from that form that you get your stem. Do you see how it has an ending? Pulcher, instead of the pulcher, no ending. And then again, second declension neuter that one sees there. It is straightforward for first and second declension adjectives. And you thus figure out, due to what ending it has, and find another noun which it modifies, which will not necessarily have the same ending, but it will have the same case, the same number, and the same gender. Now in third declension, there are three kinds of adjectives. You have third declension adjectives of single termination. For example, take the Latin word for lucky. Felix, Felix, and Felix. 1, 2, 3. Nominative, nominative, nominative. 1, 2, 3. Nominative, nominative, nominative. It's just that it's the nominative masculine, nominative feminine, nominative neuter. Same thing here for Felix. Nominative, nominative, nominative. But what is the problem with that? We don't know the stem. And so if you are a first declension adjective of single termination, which means all the three genders of the nominative, question mark, question mark, question mark, Felix, 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 and Felix. And why am I pointing at these? Because 6 words. All third declension adjectives are I stems. That's what you have to get stuck in your brain. So whenever you're talking about a third declension adjective, you're talking about these endings. So, for a single termination, again, one form in the nominative, all three genders, you have to give 3 more forms, which will be Felicus, Felicus. So look at me point. Felicus, Felicus. And why is that actually 2 endings and not 1? Because it is the masculine ending, Felicus, and the feminine ending, Felicus, and then the neuter ending, Felicus. So how many words have I written here? 6. 1, 2, 3, nominative, 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 masculine, feminine, neuter, and 1, 2, 3, genitive, 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 masculine, feminine, neuter. You have those that are of double termination. For example, we'll go with fortis, the word for strong or brave. Fortis, fortis, comma, forte. Note, I didn't put a dash, but I put a squiggle dash. That's because it is not an ending, but it is a FACO ending. Just in the same way, then that's a FACO ending. And so the reason why we call this double termination is because there are 2 forms in the nominative. Fortis, fake IS ending, but we like that fake IS ending. And why do I like the fake IS ending? Because at least I can know from the nominative what the stem is. Fortis, fake IS ending, masculine. Fortis, fake IS ending, feminine. And forte, fake ending e, for the neuter. How many words have I written here? 3. 1 nominative masculine, 1 nominative feminine, 1 nominative neuter. Then you have the third declension adjective of triple termination, in which care, third declension masculine, his twin sister, Chris, that does have that FACO ending. You see it here? So it was care, question mark, no ending. Chris, fake ending IS, and then of course, as you can guess it, it would be cré. And why do we call this the third declension of triple termination? Because there are 3 forms. So to count, 1, 2, 3, nominative, nominative, nominative. 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 Why does it only look like 2? Because these two words are written one on top of each other. And how can I do that? Because masculine and feminine, the form would be identical. And then 6 forms. 1, 2, 3, nominative, 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 all 3 genders. And 1, 2, 3, genitive, 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 all 3 genders as well. Please remember, third declension, all third declension endings are I stems. So you'll use the I stem endings. And by the way, the last of the animals is a shark. Shark is what you need. And so please be aware of the difference between nouns and adjectives, even though they will share the same endings here, first and second declension, and here, third declension. Have any questions? Please let me know. Hope you enjoyed this video. The next one is going to be over why the cases. In other words, why would a word be in a particular case that it is? Thank you.